Hello!
Hello!
Welcome to another episode of the Off Air Voiceover podcast. I am, of course, Michael.
And I'm Jen.
And we have a very, 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 very excellent guest with us today, Kathryn Vinclaire. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join us. And for those of you who are watching, you'll notice that we are, well, I say me less so, but Kathryn and Jen are nicely glammed up because it's in tradition of something that Kathryn does called Formal Fridays. And with it being a Friday that we're recording, we thought we'd try and
pay homage
to it. However,
and you look spectacular.
Well, what we've been joking about.
Looks can be deceiving, Kathryn. Looks can be deceiving.
This dinner jacket is coming off ASAP because it should be what I would have worn when I was about 12.
Honestly, I feel like people need to get on YouTube just to see this. Michael, if you want to do a twirl, that'd be amazing.
It is a must.
Shocking. Right, it's coming off.
Dear.
So I did try, but I forgot.
Yeah.
I've left all my good stuff in France. So.
And full disclosure, I do have jeans on underneath my dress because I was at Morrison's about 5 minutes before the episode started. So it's all glam in the podcast world.
Meanwhile,
and yet,
Kathryn's looking
spectacular.
Well, I'm very well practiced. I've been doing Formal Fridays since the pandemic now, so it's been years in the making.
It's amazing. Well, I love seeing it.
I do want to touch on that shortly, but just to kick things off, for those that don't know who you are, don't know much about you, do you want to just do a quick standard intro about yourself and let people know the details?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a voice actor and indie casting director. I've been working in the industry for about 6 years now. Pretty much been a full-time VO since I started. Work predominantly in video games and commercials at the moment, and then every now and then I'll do an e-learning thing or something corporate just to remind myself that I still can.
Amazing. Now, many of you will know how amazing Kathryn is, and hopefully you've met her at conferences and stuff. And she's a lovely person. But also, we've mentioned this series, we are focusing on casting a bit more. And Kathryn has just started, or a year ago started a new venture in casting for indie games, as she said. And we have brought Kathryn on to learn much more about that. Yeah. Can you tell us a bit about that, Kathryn?
Yeah, absolutely. So things kind of kicked off. I started getting an inkling about 2 years ago that there was something missing in the casting space, predominantly for indies. And that came about because I'd been to conventions like Adventure X and EGX and Develop, and you get chatting to various developers and things like that. And if you ever find yourself going around any of the indie games in particular and talking to some of those teams that are working on smaller scale productions, they don't always know where to go to get actors. And I'd had so many conversations with people that had made, really great demos for their games, and the acting might have been half decent in them. But then when you ask, well, where did you find your actors? It's always, well, my friend Dave does a bit of acting for fun on the weekends.
Or good old Dave.
Or I got our art department guy to jump into the booth or record it on his phone under a blanket.
Oh my God, it makes you so sad, doesn't it? Especially if you're like, I know Mike and I are both very keen to do more games. And you're like, oh my God, we're so desperate to do it. So I think, oh wow, you've hit the nail on the head there, haven't you?
Yeah,
definitely missing.
Completely. Basically, long story short, you talk to people that want to work in games as voice actors and they want to get introductions to indies, but they don't quite know where to go. And it is quite difficult to find indies because they aren't necessarily going out and making connections with voice actors. It's not even a last-minute thing. It's just it happens so late in production. They may have been working on these games for 4 or 5 years before they even need to consider, well, do we even want voices in our games?
Yeah.
So they're not going to be making connections with us necessarily. So I just want to be a bit of a conduit between these two groups who want to meet each other. Really, really want to meet each other.
I find that fascinating.
Yeah.
I find that really fascinating. I thought... Yeah, because obviously, a good voice actor is such an important component to the overall production. I wouldn't go as far as say it can make or break it, but it certainly can have a big impact either way, depending on how it goes.
I've definitely turned stuff off where I'm like, oh, this is not. I can't even listen to this.
Yeah, I mean, and not to sound like no hate towards the people who ever did it, but I don't know if you've ever played like the Final Fantasy games. particularly like from number 10 onwards. Oh, Lord. I had to mute it. Just read the subtitles. Do you know what I mean? It was
It's
really
an
like...
acquired taste.
Yeah. But the idea that they don't even really know where to look, I find that absolutely fascinating. I would have thought that...
It kind of makes sense, though, doesn't it? Like, why would they?
Yeah. So the problem that these studios run into is they might, if they're well connected, they might know a few voice actors. And that's amazing. And if by pure chance the characters that they've written for this particular game happen to have the exact sort of voice that one person that they know who does voice acting professionally might be able to do, then they're fine, they're sorted. And that's how most indies tend to get at least a couple of their cast members. It's through the pure luck of what they've written matching up with who they know. But what happens when they're trying to make something that's more diverse than their friendship group? Or the people that they immediately have connections with.
Yeah.
What about, are they not quite prevalent on things like casting sites, like your Voice 123s and stuff? Is that not something that's used for games?
Some know about them and some don't. Wow. You know? And the other issue there is a lot of those casting sites don't give great templates for what you should be paying actors.
Oh, yeah,
so it's a bit of a free-for-all. So it turns into how much have you got left? And how much of that can you budget up and portion up to sort of pass over to actors? Which is why you see so many indies casting well below industry standards on pay-to-plays, because there's no one regulating that.
It's so as an actor trying to do more to get in contact with the indies, I feel like you're seeing things on X, you're seeing things on Casting Call Club, but you get like hundreds or thousands of applications, and you're like, just demoralised. I know I could do a good job, but are they going to reach application 200 to hear it? It's not likely.
It's exactly. Probably not. And also, Jen, you're amazing. You've got so much experience and skill, and you've got the professional setup, and you're good to go. You could walk into a AAA studio and blow them away. But the people that are auditioning through places like X or casting call sites, they don't necessarily have that experience. Mm-hmm. And one thing I love that.
Thank you very much. But it kind of goes back to what you were saying, though. It's like, it's the connections, isn't it? And so that's why it's brilliant having someone like yourself who is that conduit, because it is about making those connections.
Yeah. Completely.
Well, somebody said to me recently about Discord. Do you ever use that? It looks really... it makes me feel so old when I say it. Whenever I look at Discord, I think, not worth the effort. I can't. I can't get my head around it. It's so confusing.
I do use it, but I was using it for my various Dungeons and Dragons games and things like that before needing it for the industry, so I got used to it that way.
That is very good. I signed up and haven't used it since. I was like, I know I should be using it, but I'm not.
It's definitely worth the effort. I've got it downloaded. And somebody said to me recently, they get quite a few auditions from indie games on Discord. Said it's definitely a good place to be to sort of interact. And I suppose it's like a lot of things. Like when you try and build relationships, don't just dive straight in and be like,
hire me.
You know, I want to be in your game. It's like we all know that the end goal is to try and work together, but build a relationship first. You know what I mean? It's a similar sort of way I do it, like with LinkedIn now. For like going slightly on a tangent, like on LinkedIn when you use it, when you reach out to someone, do you always put the personal message?
Not always.
Instead of connection request.
Because you only have a certain amount that you can actually do.
I don't ever personalise.
Yeah, so I don't either. And there's a bit of a... It depends who you ask. Some people feel a bit indifferent about it. Some people say that doing that personal message just shows that you're not just like spamming connect to everyone and you've actually left a message. On the other hand, though, and I kind of fall into this category, I kind of feel like it's, why I'm connecting with you. I do something that you do that can benefit both of us. And it's obvious, but a little, hey, I hope you're having a good week. There's nothing wrong with it. But equally, I started typing this message to somebody, and when I was reading it back, I thought, if I was reading it, I'd be like, what do you want? Do you know what I mean?
Oh,
and it's not the intention. It's just, you're just trying to build connections. So in a similar sort of way, when you reach out on Discord, I think it's good to just like comment on people's stuff, just be visible and build, some sort of rapport that way.
And get a sense as well whether this is a company, a studio, a game that you actually want to give your time to. Bearing in mind, when push comes to shove, if it's an indie, you're not going to be making massive amounts of money from it.
It's a really good point.
So why waste your time? Do it with a game that you know you'd love to do. Do it for a game that you'd do for free.
Yeah.
But then don't do it for free.
Yeah.
That's great advice. So I've got so many questions, Kathryn, and it's choosing what we go with first.
Just
in
jump
my brain.
in.
I'll tell you a few of the questions I'd like to know. I'd like to know kind of what you've explained really well, actually, why you set up the company, and that's given me a good ground of knowledge. But it's kind of thinking like, okay, so what's your vision for it? Like, what is your hopes and dreams when it comes to this?
I mean, I'd like indies to know that there is somewhere to go that is specifically designed with them in mind, and isn't a service that has been tweaked based on a service that exists for AAAs, for example.
Okay.
Because indies work so differently to a AAA game. A AAA game is going to have a casting director that may then have assistants working with them. It's going to have a voice director in the session. There'll be so many other parts of that system. And if it's indies, they haven't got the money for that. So they need to know that, I want them to know that there's somewhere they can go that's actually been built with them in mind.
That's amazing. I'm sorry, Michael. I heard the inhale for a question then. I'm going to jump in, but feel free to talk over me. I'd love to know about the process. Like, so what point do you join them? Obviously, I imagine it's at any point, but talk us through what that's like.
You know, it really does depend. So there are some studios that I have already been in talks with, and they aren't looking to cast until much, much later this year, and some of them potentially even next year, depending on their timeline. But they've heard about what I do, and they've got in touch because they're looking for a quote. And something that I offer many indies is a couple of different quotes based on the scale of what they're looking to cast. Because for a lot of them, indies don't, this is a slight tangent, but indies don't stop using voice actors or decide against using voice actors because they don't want them. They stop because they get intimidated by the potential price involved in bringing actors onto the game, because we are quite pricey. Okay. We're worth it, but we're pricey. Yeah. And it's at the end of production, and they've used a lot of budget, and they've probably gone over time and over budget already. So finding those little crumbs left to pay us is tricky. So what I'll do is I'll say, right, well, if you want to involve one or two actors for this amount of lines, here's how much it's going to cost you. If you wanted to build it out and have maybe a cast of 10 to 15 people, this is what we'd be looking at. Or I give them differentiations on the amount of time spent in the studio, etc. Because then, if they haven't finished writing the script yet, if they're in those earlier stages, they can then move forward knowing that, okay, we're going for option B, and we know what to craft, so that when we come to bring talent on, we're paying them fairly. So for some people, it's actually quite early on in the production process.
I mean, I guess that's what you want, isn't it? So they can budget it in and think about it from the offset.
Completely.
And where are you getting your rates from? Is that something that you set, or do you use a particular rate guide, or?
Good question. So it's an amalgamation. And I think, again, it does depend on who I'm speaking to. So some of the productions I've cast have been with studios where they've already made a few games, and their previous games have done quite well. They're still indies, but they've got a full studio, and they've got a big team, and they're making sequels and things like that. So I know I can come to them with rates that are very much industry standards. So that will be looking at things like SAG's rates, equities rates. Anything on the Gravy for the Brain rate guide is always a very comfy middle ground, I find, between what various unions are asking of the industry. But then I do price slightly differently for graduates. So if they've just come out of their degree, or they're still studying and they're making a game and they want one voice, and what are they going to do? You know, because I'd much rather they have an opportunity to learn how to work with an actor properly, and be taught the correct way of bringing us on board and giving us everything we need to do a wonderful job, than for them to just say, well, we can't afford it, or we'll just get someone from the drama department. And then they don't learn about the business side of bringing an actor on. Yeah. Which is so important.
Because the idea that maybe getting good voice actors in is overlooked because of a potential budget issue, when actually, you know, there's a bigger picture to that. It's to not even, for some people to not even maybe entertain it because they think it's going to be too expensive, is a shame, because obviously a good voice actor, like I said before, can make such a tremendous difference to a project. And, you know,
especially if they spent like years and years on their passion project. This is their baby, isn't it? For a lot of people, this is their baby, and they spent years on it, and then if they bring in someone poor to do the voices, it just makes me feel so sad inside. And I think, sorry, Mikey, again, I think what you're doing as well, though, Kathryn, is good, is because a lot of us will do things at a lower rate for graduates or students, and it's the kind of education around it. So saying, okay, so usually, this is what we're aiming to pay people. This is an industry standard. At the moment, we appreciate, you're self-funding and we'll do it at cost or whatever, but it's just that education that goes alongside it.
Yeah,
sometimes
completely.
as well, I think sometimes as well, there's a bit of a, like I've got an audio drama that I've got to start recording for tomorrow, which is a very cool concept. It's kind of like, there's a game called Detroit Become Human, which is all about like AI.
Amazing, love that game.
Yeah, same. And the guy I've been cast as, he's not the main character, but he's a very important character in it. Now, it's a student project for Manchester University, so they've got a very, very, very small budget. This guy's like in his final year. And I think it's one of those things where sometimes there's a bigger picture to, okay, they can't afford the fee, but I want to do the work anyway. So it's something I've got down. And also, if it goes well, it could potentially then lead on to other things. So sometimes, I think even with indie games, you do have to take a bit of a punt as well, I think, sometimes, because you don't actually know, obviously assuming you want to do it, you don't actually know where things could lead further down the line, and it could pay its own dividends, 2-3 years later if they make something more successful, they've got a bigger budget, you took a chance and helped them out at the lower budget when they couldn't afford it, and it could work out further down the line. So there's that thing to think about as well, because some jobs, I do look at, I think, okay, they haven't got much money now, but you never know. If it goes well, something in the future might turn up, and I think it's worth giving it a try. You know what I mean?
Completely. It's just goodwill. We like creative projects. We want to reward people who've got really good ideas and well-written scripts, and we want to show them that there's a space for that in the industry and that they can make what they want to make. But we also don't want anyone to be undercut. So these rates, when I say I do a reduced rate, we're not talking 50% reduction here. We're talking something a little more minimal, but enough to give a bit of breathing space.
Yeah. So, of the event, your first event that you did, was late last year, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was the weekend of EGX.
So, talk us through that. So, sort of the brainchild of it, how it all went, and sort of the fallout thereafter. So, yeah.
The fallout.
The days that followed, should I say?
Well, completely. So, to contextualise this a little bit, we've got to go back to Develop last year. This was before this service properly existed, and I was actually advertising anything that I do in terms of casting. I booked several one-to-one meetings with multiple indie studios that week to kind of soft launch the concept of a casting service designed for indies. Because honestly, as much as it makes sense on paper, if I were to meet with a lot of indies that week and then they say, well, this sounds like a nice idea, Kathryn, but we're actually already doing all of this through existing pay-to-plays or casting all of our games through X, for example, is perfect. Of course it isn't, but hypothetically, if they turn around and said, we're sorted, we don't need this, then there'd be no point in me launching it, with all the best will in the world. But the conversations I had with people there were so open, and they were pretty adamant that wasn't something that existed currently in the industry. A lot of phrases like, we really need this, and this is music to my ears, and I don't know why someone hasn't thought of this before,
what a great feeling to get that feedback when you've got something you're passionate about, and
Did
then
you
your
go away
target audience
dancing?
are like,
I did.
Your target audience are like, yeah, this is great. You're like,
Exactly.
yes.
Completely. No, it was lovely. It was a quiet reassurance, but it also became pretty clear to me that I needed to do something a little bit bigger to put myself on the map and to really showcase what this was about. So I planned this event. It was a launch event for the service that was on the same weekend as EGX. And the nice thing about that is I'm not asking anyone to come out of their little cubby holes for my launch event specifically. You're already in the area because you're going to EGX anyway.
Yeah.
So just pop over for an evening and just, come over and get to know this new service. And I was very, very fortunate to have Tilly Steele, who was one of the directors on Baldur's Gate 3, to give a really good kind of fireside chat. It was a very sort of low-key in conversation, very similar to what we're doing right now, actually, with you guys. Just talking about the industry, about indies, about the importance of actors and casting and everything. And then we had a giveaway where AAA Reels gave away a free video game reel to an entrant from the guest list. So that was really lovely too. It was just all about bringing some of those good vibes and some of the positivity and the openness that I'm looking to foster through this service.
I was gutted not to be able to be there. It was so well attended, and it looked like such a nice environment that you created. So huge kudos for doing that.
I remember seeing on LinkedIn the pictures. Yeah, it was. I was like, well done. It's a really good turnout. It was really positive.
Oh,
start.
Completely. People stayed well past closing.
I'm sure they did. Have you met voice actors?
It's like, we get to go out with some of the voice actors.
I tell you what, the best thing about that night though was, aside from the fact that it all went swimmingly and I didn't need to have a little meltdown halfway through, was that I took pause about halfway through the evening after all the talks and the giveaways had been done, and I could just have a relax and a glass of wine, and everyone was just getting on so well, and I saw people making connections that are really going to benefit their careers. I saw the exchange of LinkedIn QR codes and business cards and everything, and I thought, well, this is just lovely. The community's here.
Well, you mean like, so you took a step back just to observe for a moment, see what... Oh, that's fantastic.
I hope you felt a sense of pride, like, you know, I created this. Like, you brought these people together and now they're connecting outside of you. That is just amazing. Like,
because of your efforts. That, and I think that is the beauty of it. I think when you can take a step back and just, you know, appreciate, you know, for the time and effort that goes into doing something like that, and see it come together and people benefiting in the way that you had hoped.
Yeah.
What a wonderful thing. Yeah, that's excellent.
We've talked a lot about the studio side of casting and the developers, the other side of the table. But one thing I really want to do through this service is also improve the audition experience for actors. Because I don't know about you guys, as welcome as video game auditions are, the process of auditioning for them isn't always the most fluid or efficient or rewarding. It can be a little bit impersonal. And I don't know about you guys, but I've had some pretty terrible audition sides come through where you're filling in a lot of blanks and you're having to really scramble with assumptions on what you think is being asked of you for the audition. And I really want to put a stop to that, because the only reason why it's happening is because no one's calling it out.
Yeah. Well, so is that...
Go on, Jen.
I was going to let you talk.
Thank you. I do appreciate it.
Go on then.
No. Well, can I just, because otherwise I'll forget.
Yeah.
I was going to say, because if we're on the same page with that, I had something similar only last month, and the audition came through. It was shortlisting for this character, a bit like what was his name now from Game of Thrones? I forgot what his name. Anyway. A bit like a Witcher. Think of The Witcher. That sort of cadence and tone, etc. Anyway, it came through, but of the situations, no context was given. So the problem was, it was like, and it just literally said like how the tone it was said in, but the context of the words. So anyway, I was like, I tried to make sense of it, and I spoke to one of my coaches as well, Emily, and she said the same thing. She went, maybe it means this. Anyway, turns out the auditions got sent out again to everybody, and this time they put a little bit more notes in. And I thought, well, that kind of just proves the point. You've sent out this casting with no real context. You've got a load of random stuff back because people are just making up their own assumptions. It's just wasted your time. But if you just put a little bit more in this scene, this is what's happening, it would help the actors better, because they can pinpoint exactly how they're going to deliver those lines based on that context, and obviously save them time from having to sift through loads of auditions that are way off the mark.
Very true. What I was going to say, it is absolutely true, though. What I was going to say, Kathryn, is then do you help with that? So as part of your role, are you helping with that?
Yeah, completely. So I've got an ultimate audition sides checklist that I send out to every studio that I work with, and I say I am not sending out these auditions until everything is checked off this list. Because I don't feel it's fair to the talent for them to be having to fill in gaps. Because the problem that you run into, and we might not come into this issue too much because we're quite experienced. We've been through plenty of auditions and we've got a more developed understanding due to our experience in the industry of the kind of thing that some of these studios are probably looking for if they've not put every single detail into the audition. But the challenge there, though, is that what on earth do actors do if this is one of their first auditions? And I feel like the playing field should be totally level for anyone auditioning. It shouldn't be that you need 5 years of experience to second-guess what the studio's after.
Yeah, true. Do you think sometimes there's an element of we have a little less information there because we just want to see what you do with it from a creative perspective?
So, I think some studios think that's a good idea. Yeah. And I think that is the thinking. It's like, we just want, play with it, surprise us, or some bollocks. But the thing is it's really, what you end up with is half of the auditions being thrown out because it's just not quite the right vibe that they were looking for. Because they realise halfway through hearing all these multiple interpretations of what they're actually looking for. Whereas what they could have done is done a little bit more work beforehand, figured out exactly what kind of tone they're going for, or what sort of archetype they're looking to fit this character into, or found a really good example from another game or another, an existing film or whatever, and then and just attach that to be like, we want this. Because then you get 50 totally different interpretations of exactly what you're looking for. Something that I've learned through this process is even when you put heaps of detail in and you're very, very specific about what you're looking for in those auditions, you still get massive diversity because actors are diverse. Yeah. And because how people interpret scripts and characterization is hugely diverse.
But then if you... Jeez, we've been doing this more than ever today. What is wrong with you? I'm going this time. I'm going.
Go on, it's okay.
Okay, so I wanted to do not the day in the life necessarily, but okay. So you've worked with the developer. You've helped them with the casting. So you've got the casting where you want it to be. What's the next process? Have you got a roster? How are you sending it out? How the kind of formats that you're seeing, that kind of thing. I think everyone would love to know that.
Completely.
And can I just add one to that as well? What for people to try and join your roster or be with you? What do you look for?
Cool, good question. So, Jen, I'll start with yours. I have a roster, and my books are always open, and you can always apply. So, I tend to make a sort of a personal judgment on who I feel would be best for these auditions. And I go with my gut based on either things that I've heard through submissions of demo reels, for example, or just looking at the plain stats of what people can do, playing, age range, and gender and personality and voice type, etc.
Which would fill in for your roster.
Yeah. So kind of the spreadsheet version of that. So it's a mix of what's in the spreadsheet and what you guys have told me, but also what I know of people's voices. And that is why fostering some relationships with casting directors can be useful, because it means that I might automatically think of your voice when I'm thinking of a particular type of character. That can be useful. But then I'll go through, and after I've made that first list of kind of gut instinct choices, I'll then look through and have another look at anyone that hasn't been selected but still fits that right type on paper, because I only remember so much. I've got about 450 people on the roster currently, and I can't remember 450 different voices off the top of my head. Yeah. So I'm mindful of wanting it to be open and to provide opportunities to people that might have not been thought of as my first port of call. So I'll compile a little list. And then from that, I will send out the auditions myself to those actors. And then they bring the auditions back to me, hopefully within the amount of time needed. And then I'll just compile all those auditions into a system that can be shared easily with the studio. And then the studio is then free to listen to absolutely everything that's been sent through. But I always send it over with my own shortlist of who I feel is particularly good and who's particularly fit the brief. So it's usually 6 to 10 options per character that I'll then send to the studio to be like, have at it. Any of these people, might be who you feel personally is best. But these would be my choice.
These 2 or 3?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's like a short list, and then within the short list there's another short list of like, but if you got one of those 2, then they would be peachy.
And how often are you finding that they're going with your options?
This is the wild thing. This is the absolutely wild thing. I'd say there's about 60 to 70% of my shortlists are the same as the shortlists that come back from the studios. There might be 1 or 2 voices that either of us have chosen that are slightly different, but then we'll discuss all of them as well.
Yeah.
And we don't necessarily end up going with the people that we've both chosen necessarily, because it's a first impression.
Yeah.
And I really encourage the studios to take their time once they've got these shortlists to really consider, well, okay, of this, who do we really want? And, give yourself time. Don't just listen to it once or twice and make a choice, because it's such a big decision.
The when you're listening to demos and stuff, like, is there a particular, like what we said before about, actors like to be creative, they like to make a choice, they like to... So apart from obviously trying to fit the brief, are there things you come across that you just think, why have you done that? That can hurt the chances of actually, do you know what I mean, though?
Yeah, every time. There's not a single audition that goes by where I don't hear some rogue entries and I'm thinking, what was the thought behind that choice? It might be there's some sort of non-verbal shout or cry or whatever that needs to that sort of opens the audition. Then it wasn't in the script and it doesn't suit the scene, and I feel like they've just put it in there to show me that they can do it, but it doesn't actually serve what's being done in the script. I think sometimes people can miss really obvious stuff. This isn't great advice, to be honest, because most people know to just do what it says on the brief, but at the same time you'd be surprised there are still people who will give accents that don't quite fit, or give a sort of age to the character that doesn't quite match what the studio's after. The main issue that I find, and this would be a really solid bit of advice I'd give to anyone looking to audition for a game, is to really research the game itself.
Yeah.
Because it might be written as an emotive scene where your character is crying about something. So without any further context, you'd be like, right, lock in, serious, full Stanislavski technique for this. It's going to be hyper-real, it's going to be whatever. But then if you hadn't actually researched the game, you might not understand that, it's a kid's thing, it's a cartoonish style of game, or it's just not that deep. Like, maybe it doesn't need to be...
That's such good advice. Such good advice. Yeah.
I think, like, if you've got the tools there to do a bit of like background checks and do a bit of digging to find out more about who you're working with, it definitely helps because people tend to follow a relatively similar format. If you look at like Naughty Dog, their new one that's coming out, is it Intergalactic, I think it's called, and they have really deep story-driven characters, in the same vein as The Last of Us, as Uncharted. So roughly what you're going to get with them, and if you were to do a game of that nature and you did a bit of research, you'd see, okay, I get a rough idea of the kind of content they produce, and it can just help you a little bit. But totally. I think sometimes just to... I think the other thing as well is when you read a brief, I think some of us can be guilty of, like, we get attached to this character and obviously you want to do well, but then you have to be careful you don't cross that line of not making the character how you want it to sound as opposed to how the studio want you to make it sound. So you have to recreate their vision, not take over and this is how I think this person would sound, and you almost forget what your direction was. And I think I can understand that could be a reason why maybe some people do go off on a bit too much of a tangent and lose themselves in it, because they become so invested in this character and connected that they forget that it's someone else's vision. They've got to stick to that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course. And characters are so personal. We don't feel emotionally attached to the deodorant commercials that we've done, but we do feel emotionally attached to the characters that we voice.
Yeah, definitely.
So we're going to get a strong sense of what we want to bring to each role.
Yeah. And I think because you're trying to listen to all the bits of advice you've heard from every casting director in the world, and you're thinking, okay, so I can't second guess what they want. I should be putting my own spin on it and bringing myself to it. And some people say, read all the sides and then ignore it. And some people say, so you're going with all these, and you might do a wild card. You might do what you think the studio wants, and you might do a wild card. And, have you got any advice on what the the kind of which direction to head in, or that you personally like? Obviously, you can't speak for everybody, but
I mean, I'd say more often than not, if a studio is looking to be surprised, they will mention it in some way in the audition.
Yeah, okay.
They'll say, "Give us your best take," and then just try something different, or try it with a different accent, or a different kind of tone or characterization. I do feel people shoot themselves in the foot a bit too much sometimes when they're trying to put their spin on things, and like you say, Michael, they end up missing the brief sometimes as a result, and it's difficult because you can totally see why someone might make that choice.
Yeah.
And why in another game or another studio's version of that character, it might be perfect.
Yeah. We're also desperate to stand out, aren't we? We're all like,
well,
I'm going to add this flamenco dance at the start of this old woman scene.
Yeah.
I think like the intention is always good. Like I think for someone to go off on a bit of a tangent, it's only because they think they've brought something that might have hadn't been thought of, and thought, I'll do this, and it could make them think. But so the right intention there, because they want to do something good and creative, but at the same token, it's just remembering that just stay on point.
Yeah, by all means, tick that box. But once you've ticked it, feel free. Have at it, you know? Do whatever you want with it, because I don't think anyone should feel curtailed by needing to fit a particular brief for the entirety of the audition.
So you'd be happy with like 2 takes? Is that your...
I tend to go for 2 or 3.
Okay.
In the auditions that I send out, because you need variety.
Bro.
So for people, obviously, the people that will listen to this, there's a big push for people wanting to do voice actors love trying to get into games and stuff. So from your perspective, for somebody trying to get recognised, to get on a roster, they've got a reel, what are your specific do's and don'ts to try and get themselves on a roster to help them get recognised? Like, is there any particular traits that you tend to look out for?
Sure. So I have got specific requirements for my roster. You need to be a professional voice actor. You don't need to be a full-time professional, but you need to be professional in part. You need to have a studio that is broadcast quality. You can't just be recording sort of under your blankets into your phone, you know. You need to have a reel that is specific to video games. I've had some people try and send me audio drama reels, audiobook reels, or animation reels, and as much as that does show me that you can do characterization, I need to see video game specific archetypes to know that you can fit several hypothetical briefs that might come across my lap in the future. So it's just about reassurance, really.
I think sometimes, even like with commercial type work, or any type of voiceover work for that matter, I think for people that are new getting into it, there's definitely a thing where some people try and run before they can walk. So maybe the reel is homemade, but they don't have the professional experience or the professional critique. So, but they have enough self-belief, and, you know, the mates have said it sounds great, the friends of the parents said it sounds great. So that validation, it makes them feel to put a reel together and send it out, and I think that can be catastrophic.
It's a bit like the old X Factor auditions, isn't it? Yeah. When people came in and said, "My nan thinks I'm great," and then they'll perform, and
if you
makes me sad.
That's not because that's not the first foot forward you essentially want to put. There are obviously always exceptions to the rules. Some people do their home, like Scott Tonics did his reels by himself. I think he's won awards for them. So there's always exceptions to the rules. But I'm talking about of those where the experience isn't there, to then put a reel together which is homemade and send it out could probably do more harm than good.
Completely.
You know what I mean?
Because it shows it's not even about how good the reel is. It's the fact that you're demonstrating that you thought that level of quality was okay and was enough. Yeah. And if I'm putting a professional casting together for a studio, and this is a professional grade production, this isn't a hobby passion project, this is the real deal. This is the kind of production that people are going to want to be putting in for the Indie Game Awards, and they're going to want to make their name with it.
Yeah.
It's about respect, I think, for the amount of effort that it's taken everybody else involved in the production to get to that level, and you need to meet them at that level.
Yeah. Oh, because we're such a tiny cog, aren't we, as part of this big wheel that they're doing.
100%.
That's a really good point.
We are, but I think at the same token, I think we are maybe a tiny cog in the whole overall production, but we are still a really important one.
Oh, I don't disagree. I absolutely think it's true.
it goes the same way with we've talked about this before, but like on corporate videos or commercials or whatever. Consumers generally only consume a few main things, and that is the audio, the visuals on the screen, be that actors or scenery, the music if there is some, and then the voices that guide them. Everything else, whilst all really important, that's not what the consumers see. So if you're one of those sort of three main components, yeah, okay, like I said, it's only a small cog, but it's a really important one.
Completely. And this is what it's all about. It's the fact that I know how much voices can elevate a game. I know how I've seen so many indies where the game is brilliant, but they've added one voice, and that one voice has just made their universe so much more full and rich and characterful. It's not about needing a cast of hundreds. You just need the right voice because they can bring so much value.
Yeah, it's like The Last of Us, excellent. I mean, I think the reason why that game is so excellent is a large part of it because the casting was so good. And I think if you change that, and it maybe if it wasn't as someone as experienced or wasn't right, it would have made the emotional connection that it creates because it's such good acting is it's you can't put a price on that because it deeply resonates. I had a point I was going to say. I've completely forgot what it was. So.
It's okay, that was very beautiful.
It just fluttered away. Tend to do that a lot more since I turned 40. But
whilst you're fluttering, and this is changing the subject slightly, so apologies if you do want to go back to it, Michael. But have you started seeing any trends? Like when you're casting, are you finding actually they're always wanting this archetype, or actually I'm seeing a move towards this? Is there anything like that you can share?
I've not done enough games to see trends because every game that I've done has been totally unique. It's been a different platform, a different genre, a different style of characterization. So I can't speak to trends. But what I will say is that most of these indies that are made have been heavily inspired by 2 or 3 existing productions. And it's not to say they're not completely unique and wonderful and vibrant in their own right. They're making something new and something gorgeous. But they are still going, well, we liked the voice in this game and we like the art style of that game and we wanted to kind of put a spin on this. So I would say, regardless of archetypes or no, understanding the games that are available, and really, I think this is why people say being a gamer helps. It really does. It is
I said that to Jen.
Shorthand.
You went and got a PlayStation, didn't you? Not long after.
I had done a lot of research on like YouTube and like watching walkthroughs. I was like, you can't, and I did bits on my phone and stuff, but you can't get the full experience. So
you do, I don't think you have to be like a hardcore gamer, but I do think if you want to be in gaming or voice characters in gaming, having some hands-on experience playing games
makes a huge
really
difference.
does help.
It really does. Like, and I obviously people have said it to me before and stuff, and I just genuinely really agree. I think it does give you so much more insight once you've played it, and you get a sense of what a character's doing in a moment, or whether it's a call to action, or whatever it is. It really helps inform. So I think that's massively helped me.
Yeah, and on the other side of the microphone, when I'm recording myself for video games, the number of times someone in the studio has gone, "Oh, you know, that character from that game. Yeah, can you put a bit of that into your performance?"
Oh, okay.
That's
happened
I wouldn't have that so many times.
I'd be there like, yep, of course. I'm just. I'm checking my phone, by the way, if you can't see me.
Well, there is another thing I'm going to ask about those 2 dreaded letters because I read something. I read something a while back about the impact on gaming, and particularly things like non-playable characters. Now being voiced by AI instead, and they're leaving a lot of like the main protagonists to still be actors. But there's a bit of a shift where they're bringing more AI stuff in for stuff that doesn't necessarily require an actual actor. So from your side of the fence, are you seeing that happening more often, or how does that look with AI?
So I've not seen it in any of the games that I have cast, but I've had conversations with every studio about AI because it's such an important part. One thing that I am adamant about, one of the sort of checklists for me, when I have my initial meeting with the studio before they take me on, and I just want to get a sense of what they're looking for and what I'm after, for example, one thing I'm adamant about is I don't work with a studio unless they are willing to sign the AI Nava rider, because they need to be learning from day one that protecting actors' voices is pivotal. What I will say is I think it's a little naive to assume that every creative is going to automatically dismiss AI because they want things to be human-led. Yeah. Because AI is there to serve the cost factor of the human element. The human side of casting is the most important part of casting, because that's what you're bringing to a game. By casting it well, you are bringing humanity to a game. And if you do it through AI, then you really are just cutting off your nose to spite your face. Yeah. But my argument here is, if you know how to use a voice in your game, you can potentially spend less, have maybe less voices in your game, or have voiced parts of your script, not necessarily the full script, but just a segment of it, or the most pivotal scenes, for example. There are ways of working where you can take everything you've made already in your game and provide a voice for it without breaking the bank and without having to resort to AI. Yeah. But that said, indies will probably be some of the first people to consider using AI, simply because they don't feel that there is an option out there for them to afford voice actors, which is, again, why I think a service like this is really, really fundamental.
It's like enter
they
Kathryn.
Need to know it. Yeah. Exactly.
So you like walking on.
Yes.
I've said this so many times. I don't sound a bit repetitive saying it again, but I'm not naive. I'm well aware that the tech is getting better and it's fundamentally here to stay and it will improve. But I just don't buy into the whole fear factor of it, like taking everyone's voiceover work and stuff, because no matter how advanced it gets, it will never be a person. And in the same vein, us having this conversation now, you can't get AI to do that. Doesn't matter how advanced it is, because it's not real, it's programmed. It feeds off what you feed it. Sorry, it goes off what you feed it. So you'll never get to a point where it has a completely organic conversation with those organic cadences, inflections, and so on and so forth, the flow. All of it.
I feel like it wouldn't interrupt itself as much as we do. You'd miss that, wouldn't you?
I don't know. If I was making you two in AI, I would program them to interrupt each other a bit.
And bicker and talk over each other. Yeah, you'd need to.
Did you see there was somebody posted something online a little while ago where they had two AI chatbots, I don't know which ones they were, and they're having a conversation with each other, and apparently it turned a little bit dark at some point. I've not watched all of it, I just saw the headline.
With AI, it tends to turn a little bit dark. Pretty damn quickly.
But I just think, I think in the grand scheme of things, I think for something that requires, particularly with sticking with voice acting, for something that requires a story-driven narrative, an emotionally led character, you just can't replicate that truly with AI, and I can't see how you ever will, because it just for the foundations of what it is, it's robotic, it's not a person. So how can you ever convey true authentic human emotion if it's not a true human person? It just doesn't. You can get as close to the line as possible, but you'll never go over that line, just simply by the nature of what it is. It's a machine. So that's why I'm just not worried about it. And we've said before, we've had other people on that sort of back this up, that essentially, and again, staying with acting, if you do want to do voice acting, be it in games or audio dramas or whatever, inevitably having an acting ability is your core foundation. But I think voiceover in general, I think being able to act, so like getting lessons in acting, will help you overall in your overall voiceover work, even if it's commercials or corporate stuff, just because you're staying that one step ahead as these AI things improve. But especially with acting, as AI will get a little bit better over time, if you can bring your A game to every one of your reads, you'll win every time. If the budget supports it, you'll not get picked over AI if you bring your A game. And I'll die on that hill. I really will, because I just don't buy into the fear factor of it.
No, I support that. And one thing that isn't talked about enough, really, and something I've really been delighted to discover and be a part of with this casting service, is the excitement on these devs and studio owners' faces when they get to hear actors interpreting their characters, their universe, their world.
I love that.
That is such a mark of, I've made it.
Yeah.
To an indie studio. That is, we've got actual bona fide actors with training and degrees and everything, giving their interpretations of our characters. They're always so excited. Even though I provide a shortlist, if I were looking to streamline my process, I wouldn't send every audition over to the studio. I would do what more sort of AAA style processes do and just send over a shortlist or just send over some choice names for the big wigs to decide upon. But honestly, even when I've offered that service, they don't want to hear it. They want to hear every single voice. If I've got 350 auditions, which is what I had roughly for the last game I cast, they wanted to hear every single one because it's exciting.
Wow.
It's exciting. Although I imagine it starts exciting, then you hear 3 seconds skip, next.
Just becomes noise after. Do you know what? I can totally envision that, and I think that's another good point from the emotional perspective. Again, bringing your A game, because these people who have brought the thought of these characters, they envision them in their head. If you then turn up and deliver a performance that brings that thought process they had to life, the internal satisfaction and elation of like, oh my God, there they are. That's so cool. And I think again, and I just in a similar way, actually, I remember I can't get my words out, bloody hell. In a similar way, about a year or so, I started writing these children's books years ago, and it's been something that I've come back to. It's sort of like a Power Rangers-esque age group, maybe Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So what the characters be like cool, they had like a bit of a vibe and an edge to them. But I can't draw for shit. So what I did was I started like coming up with like mock like AI generated images just to see what it come up with. Obviously they're all garbage. And then I went to an illustrator and I said, look, this is what the characters are about. And they did 2 for me. And I was like, oh my God, there he is. And it was just that whole feeling of like, and again, that was because somebody took what I said through back and forth conversations, and they, through what I asked them, they brought it to life, and there it was. And again, that's why I say I would die on that hill about the AI thing. In the same way that if you bring that version of like your voice to this character and it comes alive, you'll it's it must be a very satisfying feeling for them. So I'm not overly worried about it at all. I'm not.
I'm getting conscious of the time, and Michael, we have something very exciting to do first, and then Kathryn, I'd love to hear your final words about advice for actors. But before we do that, Michael, what time is it?
Oh, you know what time it is? It's time for Voiceover of the Week.
Yeah, Kathryn was like, I don't know, what time is it?
I was genuinely scared for my life.
I'm so sorry, I probably should pre-warn you. Didn't want to forget.
Trigger warning, please.
I know. Okay. Now, bear with me 1 second while I try.
So for anyone who doesn't know, each week Michael and I take it in turns to pick a voiceover artist whose work they've shared on social media, and we've seen it and loved it, and we want to give them a bit of hype and a bit of just promote their work, because we all need a little bit of a helping hand sometimes.
Absolutely. And it's just nice to just show some recognition for pieces of work that we come across that we think that was actually really great. I really enjoyed that.
We've lost Michael.
Michael, no.
So
we got so close to realise that.
Can't believe my internet connection dropped just at that pivotal moment I was about to introduce who it was.
Okay.
Where did you hear
Michael?
Up to? I'll have to just slice it and edit it back.
You're fine. Just let us know who it is this week.
So, my voiceover of the week is Mr. Pierre Mauboucher. Pierre, if I've butchered that surname, your surname, I sincerely apologise. I've been aware of Pierre's work for a little over a year. He's a French voice actor, but I came across a reel that he's done, which is his English speaking reel. And when you listen to it, you'll know straight away, like, his voice is just this really rich, warm, it's luxurious, and I've got a little clip of I'm hoping it's going to work. If not, I'll have to lay it over, but I've got a little clip of his compilation video here. So without further ado, I will play it now.
Love, it makes you do crazy things. Welcome to the city of love. Dolce & Gabbana, like blue.
We French, we treat our cows well, very well, so they make better milk.
Jean-Paul Gaultier introduces Fleur du Mal.
There we go. So that's Pierre.
That's brilliant.
There's a nice range. there's a nice range of styles, even though he keeps that sort of tone with his voice. The range there that changes.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of his work. So Pierre, you're my voiceover of the week.
Yeah, well done, Pierre.
So that's a great piece of work that you've a great compilation reel that you've got there. So yeah, so well done. So go on, Jen. What was your final thing you were going to say?
Well, do you want to stop sharing a second so we can see?
I don't.
If
know
you
how
can.
to
So
do
I'm
that.
just we've got to wrap up now, but Kathryn, I would love to hear your final thoughts and like any message for voice actors out there who really want to work in indie games, and like anything that you can kind of leave them with.
Absolutely. I mean, if you're looking to get your first game, explore all avenues. Don't feel like my roster is the only way in, or pay-to-plays are the only way in. Make connections and develop friendships. Don't go into networking looking to get business cards. Go into networking looking to make friends. Because as much as they are technically business contacts and they're there to further your career, people help people that they care about, and if they know that you're looking for your first role, then they may call upon you. So don't neglect those connections that you can make with the people that are making those games. But also when it comes to applying to rosters and things, make sure you're bringing your A game, and that doesn't mean just your enthusiasm, because everyone's enthusiastic and excited.
We're all very passionate.
Exactly. It's your heart and soul is not enough. It needs to be backed up by concrete skill that you can demonstrate in your reel. And if you can do that, then you're halfway towards getting your foot in the door anyway.
You mentioned before that your books are open. Are you okay? Do you want to plug your site for your roster, or is that invitation
absolutely.
only?
Yeah, so if you head to voiceovervinclaire.com, there is a casting page. If you scroll to the bottom of that casting page on voiceovervinclaire.com, you will find a little link where you can apply to the roster. You'll need to have your reel ready, and you'll need to have details of like your home studio setup, accents, etc. But it's a pretty quick and painless process, so feel free.
We'll share the link as well.
Yeah, I'll put the link in the notes.
Yeah. And for one last thing as well, sorry, is like thinking, okay, so if we are out and about, Michael's laughing at me again, and we are meeting indie developers, obviously we'll be plugging our own stuff, but like we want to go out and share the word about what you're doing. Is there a message for indie directors or developers, that you would want us to say? Anything?
Absolutely. Just let them know that Kathryn Vinclaire has made a service that's been created exclusively for them. I am never going to work on a AAA game. I have no desire to, because I'm just there to look after the indies.
Okay.
Excellent. There we go. What a positive message that is.
Yeah. This has been so interesting.
I've loved it. I said I'm trying to get... I'm fascinated by the whole side of the games and the casting stuff. So, yeah, so there's been lots of eye-opening. Oh, one final thing. The Formal Friday. We never touched on that. So where did that come from?
So it was lockdown, and I was bored of waiting for men to ask me out on dates and bored of lockdown preventing me from going on any. So I started getting dressed up on a Friday. I guess Voiceover Vinclaire, Formal Friday, I'm just a bit of a slut for alliteration. So I just started doing it. And I would have like a Zoom call with a friend, and they would join me in getting a bit dressed up. And it just meant that our finest,
so nice.
happiest, most dazzling clothes weren't just gathering dust in the back of the wardrobe. And then when lockdown came and went, I just kept doing it because it's really, really fun, basically.
Yeah. It's great that that's synonymous with you now as well. I mean, what a lovely thing to have against your name.
It has.
Yeah, I think like, from the social perspective, like certainly I came across it on LinkedIn a while back, and it just became like a really regular thing. And I thought it's so different, and it's definitely like it's something that's easily remembered. Like, oh, the girl who does the formal dresses on a Friday and stuff. It was just genius. I thought it was brilliant.
Yeah, no, it's lovely.
Idea.
Some people have come up to me and said, oh, good idea on the branding. That must be really good for your brand. And it is. But in its essence, I am just carrying on something that I already do and is very me already. And I've just decided to share it on LinkedIn and Instagram. You know, it's not that deep. But that's what makes it so real, I think.
It works. That's the most important thing. It's got it's become memorable, and it's got eyes on your work and your profile and stuff. So it's Yeah, well done. Okay,
Thank
well, I guess
you
we'll leave
so
it there.
much.
Generally, thank you so much, Kathryn. It's been a real pleasure getting to know you a bit better. And
thank you, guys.
Best of luck with everything you're doing with your casting.
Yeah, I feel genuinely excited for you and for the industry as well. I think great things are coming.
Yeah.
They really are. They really are. No, the indies are a pretty thriving scene at the moment.
Yeah.
Even with all these studios closing at the AAA side of things, indies have a lot to fight for. So we've just got to be there to meet them.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
All right.
We look forward to seeing you next week.
Yeah,
Yes.
Thanks very much, folks. See you on the next one.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.